the status of your pipeline, it will predict your future business based on statistics. So if you know that you've got to have 10 people to talk to get 2 pieces of business, you've got to say, how many people do I need on average to get those 10 people? And it could be 30, it could be 50, it could be 100. It depends on your product, your service. And so if you know that pipeline, it really is quite key because you can always improve on that pipeline. And maybe if I just share the screen for the moment, because I'm going to be in some breakout sessions now. So at some point, I will want you to take any notice. There's no poll today. You'll be disappointed to know. That's where we've been all this time. I can do that down there. And that's the template we work to organize these meetings. But more important, if ever you're a bit befuddled, or we all get like that, in your marketing or you're making key decisions, you need to know where you are in these areas, because you could be making a decision at one end and you haven't got the audience right, or we haven't got the sales process, the pipeline right. So today we're going to focus, get on there. We're going to focus on that 3 areas: the audience, to the engagement, to the sale, which is in fact the pipeline. And we discussed from last week that there's sort of 5 key areas of that. And one is we need to reach out to that audience to get a lead, somebody to at least pay attention to us. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. And then we've got to connect with them in whatever means. It's very important that salespeople and the people approaching you with sales have connected and they're just straight into the pitch. And that's why it feels like, sounds like, and is a sales pitch. It happens on telephone calls, it happens on LinkedIn, it happens all over the place, and we hate it. And so nobody hears like that, because the bit they miss is they fail to engage with that person, to qualify them, to find out whether the solutions they've got match the problems that they've got. And you can't assume they know their problem. You may think they've got those problems, but you need to know, do they know what those problems are? Do they know the impact of those problems? And we're going to go into that today. And then, of course, we present. The presentation is presenting the solutions so that you both win. You're able to take them from A to C. And that was the journey. And in fact, if you have a pipeline on an Excel spreadsheet, on HubSpot, I think do one, or whatever your CRM system, and you might not use all those words. You might just put lead, engage, qualify, present, or whatever. But, if you know what your audience is, how many people have you got as leads? How are you reaching out to get those leads? And in fact, this is just a recap from last week. We said that there's many ways. Everybody's different. Everybody's actually paying attention in different areas. If somebody's not on LinkedIn, no point in trying to reach them there. So if your target audience isn't on LinkedIn, so where are they? Are you good? Are you really up to speed with finding people on Google by pay-per-click or any other pay-per-click method, Facebook, etc.? Is your market on social? Maybe with Helen, that's a good place for her marketplace. And there's ways to find out those people who are coming up for celebrations that may want her superbly sculptured cakes. Could be on LinkedIn if you're networking online or you're networking in real life. That could be where you're focusing to look for your audience, and referrals, etc. So you can see that you've got to choose how you're going to reach out to that lead, how you're going to grab their attention. I'm going to show you an example shortly. Then, of course, you've got to connect with them. And are you going to connect? Are you going to do? Is it all going to be on the web? Are you going to bring them through to a certain stage on the web before you speak to them? Or are you selling off the net, off the page? Is the phone the better medium? That tends to be the case with a sort of an older audience, an email. is Messenger working for you? Because, of course, all of these things you can try. And if you know how many people are going through these areas, and assuming you've got the right audience, if you find people dropping off at this stage, you may say, well, maybe I need to tweak that, or you need to tweak this. Then, of course, you qualify the person. And the only way to qualify that is you first make a judgment, but you've got to dive in deeper to ask the right questions. You've got to not take anything for granted. And the more you're able to do that with skill, and especially find out from them, rather than telling them, find out from them what the impact of the path they're on is going to mean, then the better your presentation, the better you'll know whether there's a fit, and the better that fit will be accepted when you make the presentation. You know, so there in the presentations, you've covered questions, you've covered the problems, you've certainly covered the impact, and you've come to some solutions. And the next step is to say, do you want to buy my services, my product, or not? And most people will maybe be able to make a decision then, but sometimes I've left that gap because they'll say yes or no, but sometimes they will not. You'll need to follow up because they're thinking about it, or they're having to refer to somebody else. So you will need to follow up. And I'm sure that each person that's seeing this for the first or second time, having analyzed it, will know there's certain areas maybe they skip, maybe we could improve on. I know I certainly am guilty of this. So it's a yes or no. If it's a no, it's a good question to ask why in a nice way so that you can learn from it. Remember, we never fail, we only learn. And then you record the statistics. And the more we do this, the more success, the more no's we'll get, but the more we'll learn and the more we'll fine tune. And that's how you develop the skills. So I'm going to show you something. I shouldn't have done that first. I've got to go through that again. I'm going to show an example. And I think I've told a few people that I spoke to a guy I've known many, many years back. I spoke to him recently. And at hours, I had to get through his PA first, but then the call I thought was going to be an hour. It was just a Zoom call we booked, turned into 3. And it wasn't a sales, it was a really good conversation. It was flowing both ways. Because I don't know whether you know, 3 years ago, 3 years ago in June, I think I was just coming out of hospital. I'd had a triple heart bypass. Tried to sue BNI for all those business breakfasts that they forced me to eat, but no, I'd had 3. I didn't have a heart attack. I had 3 arteries that were 90% blocked. So maybe you think you've got indigestion, or you're getting really short of breath, you need to get checked out because it's a hidden killer. If I'd have not done that, I wouldn't be here today. So the team in Bristol were absolutely fantastic, fully recovered. Although my swimsuit shots for Speedo are not going to happen without heavy Photoshop. Thanks to the big scar I've got. Anyway, so I naturally since then have been more concerned, and especially at my age, men get to a certain age, and women as well, they start to concern themselves about their health. And I was concerned about shape, ego-wise, but also health. And I was concerned about, as a lot of men over 40, belly fat. So this is what the discussion was about. So I'm going to take you through, and I'm working with this guy now because I organised with the Lions a diabetes day in Wells, and we got 80 people there. And the more I've looked into this, the more I know that a lot of the advice people get is completely wrong, even government advice. There's other ways to do it. So I'm going to be working with Tim. So I'm going to show you this, but I want you to watch, and what I want you to pick out on is the sequence he goes through, and see where it could apply to you. So I'll go through it first, then we'll look at it, and then we can discuss. So the first thing is, from a contact point of view, I'm now going to be contacting the target audience are men over 40 who need to lose belly fat, or maybe who are diagnosed with diabetes or pre-diabetes, but I guess the guys with the pot belly are easier to identify. It's not a difficult market to spot. So, and I will have that first engagement with them, and I'll obviously need to qualify whether it concerns them, whether they're trying anything, whether they've tried something, etc. And at that point, I will send them to this page, and you'll notice it's men over 40. If you want to lose weight and you've tried everything before, here's how to lose the belly fat for good without starving yourself or crazy exercise. Calories and exercise don't work anymore, not after 40. And here's why. And if somebody then clicks on that, that there, oh, by the way, they click on that, and I can't remember, it's about 20 minutes that. It really educates. He doesn't sell anything. He educates people on why they've got that problem, why people get it, why it's difficult to get rid of, and the routes you can go. But it comes to a point where it ends, and he says, now, if you want to know how I did it, because he takes 25 men and has some remarkable statistics. Lower down this page, there's some befores and afters, but he said, you want to know more, just click on that. So to get the 48-hour pass, you click that, and that comes up. So at this point, you see where I've put my name on, and that says continue watching, and it goes to the next page, which is, I think it's about an hour and a half. So he's a big educator, doesn't sell anything. Let's face it, we all need to educate. Remember I've said we need to educate our market. And at the end of it, there's the option to at least take the advice he's got. There are some particular appetite suppressants and et cetera in there that people might want to buy. And of course, but he's promoting this whole program. So, by the way, I think on the earlier one, that if you want to click, if you suddenly want to click away, up pops that if you don't have time to watch now, you can get the written version, so you can pull down a PDF. So that might appeal to people who want to know more about that. So from a marketing point of view, and that's why I'm getting you to think about your marketing. Are you doing, because I was staggered at this because I do a lot of this on my own. Ewan and I and Rod, we have one part, the video, but the rest is phone call. The rest is, is quite labor intensive. And so I thought that was a particularly good approach. So so again, if this is a project of mine, I'm going to start to be thinking, where am I going to find this audience? From a networking point of view, who do I know or who can help me reach people are dealing with a lot of people, men over 40 with this problem, because I'd like to educate them so that I can maybe work with them, or we can get into that market. How am I going to connect with them? Because I don't just want to send out I could just send out a link, but really I need to be trying to pre-qualify people to make sure that pipeline is a fruitful one. So there's the link, there's the qualify. I will pre-qualify, but there's the qualify. There'll be a link that goes to that when they press the second half. So they're qualifying themselves now. If they've got to 10 minutes in this, what he's talking about, and say, oh, not for me, and it won't be, but it will be. If people do that, then they're not qualified. But if they get to that stage and they say, hey, this is sufficiently of a concern, I want to know a bit more, then they will qualify themselves, double qualify themselves by that email. I will get that email. I'll be notified. I can track where people are on this. And then finally, they get to that stage. They may decide they want to get started with the program. They may not. But at least I know that the people coming through the pipeline, I can follow up and learn from that. So that basically, and that was I don't know why I put that. So this is, I just want you to make a note of this. There's some key points here, because I'm going to open it up for a small amount of conversation, and I want to get you together in some breakout rooms. So I know who my target market is, and I assume by now you do. I've always been of a mind, because I'm looking at that, because I have solutions, I assume, or it's easy to assume, I don't assume, but it's easy to assume that you know the solutions to their problem, but you don't know what their specific problem is. Like if I'm talking to somebody with if I want to help them fix solutions, they've got to know where they want to go from. Do they want to leave A to C because they've got health issues? Have they suddenly been told they're pre-diabetic? Do they just want to lose that because they're about to go to a wedding and give their daughter away in 6 months, and they don't want to look, they're conscious of that? Do they want to go back into a gym or swimming? Do they want more? Are they always tired? So I need to know that. So I can't assume, because everybody's got different, and neither can you with your clients. So you've got to really, you know why you're in front of that audience, but you need to verify those solutions. So I want you to then, when you break out, just briefly describe, you don't need to go into detail. What is your pipeline? Do you have one? It doesn't matter if you don't have one. I'd sooner know, because I can maybe help you create one. Is it a physical pipeline? I know that it might have changed. I know Chris has got a way in which he brings people through, but is it a physical pipeline? It could be they go on the net, they click a button, they make a phone call, and they book. And it's physical. Or is it digital? I met up with a guy online yesterday, and it was through his calendar app, and that's the way he deals with that. How do you qualify your prospects? In other words, in that conversation, how do you determine your solution is a good fit? And what questions do you ask? What questions could you ask? And here, if we're breaking out, we can help each other. Because it's at that stage that you start to win your business, because you're showing interest in them. You see, it's not about you, it's about them. And you can't assume anything about them. The more you are interested in them and helping them with your solution, and you can only do that when you're really asking questions about their business. So if I stop sharing that. Am I back with everybody? I think I am. Back with everybody? Good. So any comments on that at this stage? Do we know what we're doing?
So, yeah.
All right. No, it's suddenly silent, and I want to suddenly wonder whether
it needs a validation.
I thought I've broken something. Any comments on what we're looking to do? Yes, Nick.
I was just going to say, Paul, I don't know whether I'm typical of the rest of the group here, but I think I probably do the process, but I probably do it in a slightly informal, ad hoc way. And sometimes it's more structured, sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. I think I know the journey, and I probably adapt it depending on where the lead comes from and who the client is. But yeah, I think we probably all try and run that kind of process where we actually go from lead qualification to close. But it can be done in so many different ways.
I'm the same. I've always been the same. I think creative people. So I'm not saying you've got to change anything. I just want us all to be aware. Where it's been helpful for me is working with Ewan and Rod, and needing, because I've got other things I'm doing, to set up some sort of structure that keeps me organized. And I'll again be honest, just of late, I've been slightly distracted because I'm looking at working with Tim. I spent a good afternoon going right the way through my pipeline, my funeral marketing pipeline, identifying, because I'd not done it as diligently. I was going through the pipeline, but I was not doing it diligently. And out of the 80, I've decided that I started to reclassify them. I want to know how many people had a job. I know how many people through the interviews. How many people had a job? How many people were already business owners and entrepreneurs? And how many people were just curious? And I found that I've got about 11 people in that pipeline, 80 people, but I've got 11 people that are entrepreneurs and serious. And I've got about 4 people that are, there's only their present circumstances are stopping them from going ahead. And so from getting to a stage where I've got all these names and nothing going on, I've sort of bundled them back in the pipeline. So if ever you can carry on doing what you're doing, but if ever you think, well, what's happening, rather than going spending more money and time and attracting a bigger audience, see what you've got and where they are. You know, I didn't follow up on that one as I should, or I've not reached out to that person. In other words, that just helps you provide that umbrella of guidance. It's not to say that you've got to run your business, you know, but your pipeline, if you know your stats, even doing it the way you are, and then just every week you say, well, I did, it'll measure what you're actually doing. I mean, when we reach out to people, we grab their attention on social media, what do we want them to do? You know, if we build, is it just a social? And that's when your LinkedIn and your Facebook becomes a social. And there's nothing wrong with that, but don't expect any more from it. Don't expect any more from your networking if you're just in a social network where nobody's really bothered about, you know, or you get a bit of business occasionally. See, people used to moan about BNI and about the fact they tracked everything. But I tell you what, it didn't have to keep people on track, keep them focused on why they're there, why they're spending that money. So that's all I would say to that, Nick. Anybody else, any comments on that? So if maybe this exercise will just say, well, you know, I've got all these names. It's really clear I haven't got enough leads. I'm getting really frustrated because I've ended up with just 3 people I'm trying to convince because they're the only people I've got. They're not enjoying the experience, neither are you. You know, I always said that the more qualified people you got in through the pipeline, the more you are not as concerned about somebody saying no, and that is a fact. So what I like to do is I like to split everybody up, if I may. 2, 3, 3. So I can. We'll try and do some. We do some 3s. I'll do some 3s. And again, it's just a matter of having a meaningful conversation about those areas. Who's your target market? How do you? What are the issues your target market face? How do you help them face those solutions? And how do you know what sort of questions do you ask to find out? And in fact, that's where the other 2 might be able to help you with those questions. Let's just see how that goes. So I managed to pop a few of the rooms, broke into them. Any aha moments, any points that you found particularly valuable that could help the rest of us? Yes, Anne-Marie.
I had an aha moment, which was just so stupidly simple. I don't know why I've not thought about it. But we were talking about some of the objections that we have that aren't price objections. And one of the objections that I have is time. I haven't got time to write a book, want to do it, haven't got time to do it. And Zoisa just came out with this brilliant idea. She said, well, why don't you just break down the steps and put it in a format that people understand, like a PDF or something, so that they can actually see exactly what's involved and know where their time is going to be spent, so they can kind of budget their time. And obviously I do that when I speak to people, because I say, right, this is the process, this is what happens, blah, 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 blah. But I don't have it any other where. And I was like, oh my God, that's so simple. So it was genius. That was an aha moment.
Good, good. Anybody else? I caught the tail end of a conversation with Ollie and Nathan and Helen's group, and Helen was talking about the fact that it's reaching the right audience. How do I reach the audience of people that want a celebration cake but also have money? Because not everybody has got that. Well, that's the definition of your audience, really, isn't it? You know, if nobody's, I don't know what Helen charges for her cakes, but let's say they're £100, and you can go and get a caterpillar cake for your children's, for 15 or £12 at Marks and Spencer's, or even less at Aldi or Lidl. I don't know. I don't know about the cake wars, but to not be frightened to take on the competition, because I think she needs to. She won't educate that person that they should spend 10 times the amount on a cake, but by having an education program, she'll make her target audience feel more comfortable in saying, yeah, I told you so. That's why I would choose Helen. So in other words, educating people, why her cake, how her cakes are different, that she knew it could be an ingredient story, Madagascan vanilla, real life Sicilian organic lemons cost 10 times more than the lemon substitute that's in your cake elsewhere. You could go that route, or you could just show a cake and say, you're not going to get one of these at Tesco's, and actually take them on. And if I can just share something I saw the other day, we've got a fabulous place in, where am I? Just see if I can share a portion of screen. Let's see. Just bear with me. I'll describe it because I'm struggling with this. Right, I've got it somewhere here on my backdrop. No, I can't do it. It was a lady that said, we have a great seamstress in Wells called Cloth, lady from New Zealand. She's absolutely excellent. She's done really good business since she came in. And she's well known as the premier. She's expensive, but, the people with money go there. And this other seamstress put 3-4 pictures of herself in different clothes. She said, and she actually complimented. She says, I think we all know how good Carolyn is at cloth, but I just want you to all know that I'm also a seamstress and blah, 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 blah. She had 186 likes on her post. So she wasn't dissing Carolyn, but she was holding her up on a pedestal, realizing that not everybody will want to go to cloth because they won't be able to afford her prices, but if they want an alternative. And I thought that was a bit clever. So that's why you shouldn't be frightened to take on your competition. When you're talking with clients, do you ever ask what they've done in the past to solve the problem they've got, if they know what that problem is?
Yes.
And how do you, what sort of questions do you ask? How do you?
I guess for me, I asked if they've used video before, why they did it, and did it work to solve that problem? And a lot of the time, it's a case of like, oh, we thought we needed to do some filming for no reason at all, so we got someone in that made us a video that we're not happy with because it doesn't do anything. And then I start rubbing my hands. I'm like, okay, we can definitely help you out then if you didn't get your business problem solved last time, But I think it's a good approach to have, isn't it? Because otherwise you don't know what their expectations are and what they've.
Temptation is then to jump in. I'll come back to you, and then temptation then is to jump in with your solution. But the question I would ask is, why did you not go back to that person that did that video?
Okay.
So they'll tell you what they don't want.
Yeah.
Okay. And you just said something, it didn't do what we wanted to do. What did you want it to do? Why don't you think it worked? So we certainly don't want to be doing that again, because remember, it's the outcome that they need to know the outcome. Back to Tim, there's an outcome if people don't sort out their health. What is their outcome? it's potentially diabetes. If you don't sort that out, a lot more people have legs amputated because of diabetes. So in other words, there's also a bit of fear factor in that sales process, if you like. Somebody with belly fat has got fatty liver disease, fact, because fat gets stored there before the belly. So it's knowing your product, but knowing what the outcome is. And so that, remember, they want to make that journey, but if they don't do something, there's a cost for doing nothing. There's a cost for not working with Nathan. There's a cost for not, maybe there's not a cost, maybe there isn't a cost for not having Helen's cake unless it's prestige amongst the community. So if Helen gets a cake into a wedding, and I don't know how you get the other details, but if she gets a cake into a wedding or a 60th birthday celebration of, are they going to want to, they're likely to have other 60th birthdays coming up because that's where their friends are. So maybe just permission to show that cake, or I don't know. You have to think about ways around that. But so it's not jumping in. The questions are important. It's the second and third question, probing in a nice tonal way that gets you even more information. If you do it enough people, you just find out what. And I think Ewan was mentioning this when I jumped into their call. You begin to learn what people don't want. It's quite a bit of market research for you when you're asking those questions. Sorry, Nathan. Sorry, Ewan, you had your hand up.
No, I was just gonna. I was gonna say that we've realised in the year that we've been going that our business is basically formed on people who have tried digital marketing beforehand and it hasn't worked. So a key question for us is, what have you done? And often people say, oh, I've done X and it doesn't really work. And then it's about, what did you do? Why did you think it not work? What was your expectation? And then, so you move from listening and then you try and use your experience to say, okay, well, either that sounds like it has not worked, or have you thought about possibly thinking of it this way or doing it X, Y, and Z? And it starts off just having a conversation about people's challenges and what hasn't worked beforehand, and then saying, well, what we could try and do is X. So you try and turn the conversation around, if it's appropriate, to find a solution that perhaps will work and solve what they couldn't do beforehand. Because, for us, it's working with people who've kind of worked with digital marketing that hasn't worked and then trying to make it work for them. Hence why we say making sums add up.
Yeah. Certainly if somebody's tried digital marketing before and they're listening to you, it means that they really know that digital marketing is the way to go. We just got to find the right solution together. So we need to find out why that didn't work. But if you watch this re-recording, Ewan, you've used some words there several times in that, which I'm concerned about. And I'm only saying this for everybody's benefit. You've said, maybe we could try this, perhaps this will work, etc. They're all tentative. And when you're dealing with a client, what they're looking for from you is certainty. Now, I don't say you've got to go hypey or bullshitty or whatever, but they're looking for certainty, not, well, maybe. You can obviously say, no, there's no guarantee, but we need to find something that we know will work. Can never guarantee it, but but you keep saying try and perhaps, etc.
No, and to qualify that, I don't mean
that's your nature, but I'm saying for everybody else's benefit to bring in the.
No, but to qualify that, rather not perhaps as in perhaps you should try this as a thing, but perhaps working with us as in it's not a perhaps this should work. I'll be very directional in terms of what I think will work, but it's perhaps, but accepting that you may not want to work with us, sort of thing, if that makes sense.
Again, I would want to work with you. I just want to, from a certainty. I wouldn't hesitate. If you are the expert. The things I tell people about you would make you blush.
I'm gonna say I'm blushing now.
But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't believe it ourselves and we don't show it. You've got to use a dialogue with certainty. And when you're not sure about your pricing, or you're not sure about your audience, you take your own skills for granted, we become quite tentative, and it slips into the words we use. and people pick up on that. I picked up on it. So
you're right,
Good
Paul.
point.
That's all very subliminal, isn't it? That if that lack of confidence comes across.
maybe
It's
I just
subliminal,
listened a
isn't
bit.
it?
Maybe I just listened to nuances, and I'd read between the lines, and probably that's my sales background, because you've got to read between the lines. The things they say are not necessarily what they mean. Very often they think they've got a problem, but only they don't know it. They fix that, and it's still not. And it's not taking them from where they want to go, because they've fixed that, but they haven't realised there's other things that are influencing that journey. And it's only by actually taking a genuine interest in them and really probing to try and understand, if I was in their shoes, if I was them, what else would I, knowing my experience, what else would I look at? Marcus.
Paul, with that in mind, you've got a very positive mindset, and maybe we could have a program or a section on developing a positive mindset in the same way that you have.
I don't know whether there's a quick fix to that, Marcus. I think that's developed over many, many, many years. And sometimes I'd have to look into that as to whether it's inbuilt or whatever. I do see people, I do meet people that are of a negative basis. They come from a negative viewpoint. I know that you talk to somebody, and that there's a lot of people find a lot of ways why something won't work. I've got a good friend of mine that popped round for a cup of tea yesterday, and he'll give me lots of reasons why. Oh, I've tried that before. No, that didn't work. And you meet them, and you either want to go out on a limb and educate them, or you say it's not worth what was it Tim on this conversation said, because he's from Tennessee, and he said it's a 50-mile uneven road or something. You can go down that road, but it'll be bump after bump after bump. I do tend to, I'm listening all the time. I learned ages ago, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and then it's got Anne-Marie, and a guy there, never forget it, he said, would you allow somebody, a neighbor, to knock on the door, you open the door and they come in and they dump your rubbish in the middle of your lounge? Would you allow that? No, you wouldn't. So why is it you tune to the TV, you tune to the media that's giving you all that negativity, you're on pity parties with people who are making excuses? Why? You've got to be careful of what you allow into your mind. So I don't allow much of that into my mind. I feed off positive stuff. I shared something with somebody the other day, and I'm happy to put it. I'll perhaps put it in the community side. It was a Joe Rogan. He's a podcaster. He's gone to Spotify recently, and it's about 5 minutes, and it's outstanding. And if people just listen to, I listened to Steve Jobs' commensurate address at Stanford University. I must have listened to it 10 times, and I know exactly what he says. But you've got to keep reminding yourself, because there's all sorts of positive, negativity. It's all around us. All this mass stuff's all negative. Now, I don't want to, I'm happy for people to do what they want, but you've got to protect yourself. So, and I think you've got to work at that. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, so I was just going to kind of come in on that point. Probably about 18 months ago, I was the most negative person you would have probably met. No self-belief whatsoever. And then when it got to a point and I realised that I was just being a doormat, and I'd had enough of being a doormat, and I went, right, no, then everything changed. And it's interesting, because I'm not the most positive person by any means, but I've managed to find self-belief just from talking to other people. And I found that really beneficial. So when people feed back to me and they say, yeah, actually, you do know what you're talking about, or then that's how I found it. And I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with somebody, and I'm working with his wife. and he he sort of on the quiet tells me what she says, and he was like, oh, she's just blown away, and that's brilliant, and I'm not saying that I'm amazing or wonderful and that I'm the solution to everyone's problems, but the fact that people are saying that is what feeds me to keep going and having that confidence to do it, if that makes sense.
I absolutely. The old philosophy of BNI was always give as gain. I didn't fully understand it for 2 or 3 years, but it is. There's a pleasure in giving something. There's a pleasure in. Very often, don't we see something in somebody that they don't see in themselves? Anybody agree with that statement? You do, don't you? And the trouble is, sometimes those people need encouragement. My eldest son, I don't need to do any of that. He's quietly confident, not boastful. He's a lovely lad. My younger son has been through real traumas, and yet he is wonderful, and he doesn't see it. Now he's beginning to see it, and he's beginning to help others, and there's pleasure in that. And that's, you just make a difference like that. It doesn't take any, it's no more energy to be negative than it is to be positive, but that doesn't solve the solution for people that are negative. People are negative or they don't believe in themselves because of something that's happened somewhere in their past, somewhere in their story. Nick had his hand up, and then Rebecca.
Yeah, I think there's a really important topic here around confidence, isn't there? It's when we go and buy something, if we go to a specialist and we're the customer, we expect the person that's selling to us or educating us to be confident and to know what they're talking about, and therefore it shows you how important it is for us to play that role when we're talking to our clients. And that doesn't mean that you're arrogant. Confidence and arrogance are two different things, aren't they? Confidence is being, is knowing what you're talking about, but being able to listen and add value and help your client in that conversation, in that journey. I had a conversation with a client recently that I booked, and he had a photo shoot about 5 years ago, and he said he's never looked at the photos because they were so awful. And he said the main reason why is the photographer never really explored what he wanted from the photos in the initial conversation. And I think it's having the confidence to really get under the skin of what the client wants and to add value and to give, and you're the person with the skills, aren't you? They're coming to you because you've got the skills. But don't ever take it to that point of arrogance. It's having the confidence all the time.
I wonder whether this has come up because, and I've been through this as well, deep down, we've got this like imposter syndrome. We think, who am I to do this? Who am I to be seen as the expert? And
I don't think it is imposter syndrome, Paul. No, I don't. I think we're all pretty experts in our field here, really. I think everybody here in front of me has worked hard and has got to a level. I think it's just that we're all genuine people in some ways. I mean, the Americans seem to excel at this, isn't it? All the role models you mentioned there, you've taken, are all American: Josh Rogan, Anthony Robbins, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
and yet, who would want to be American?
I didn't mean that any of us were imposters. It's that how we see ourselves is not how others see us. That's what I meant. And sometimes, especially if we're having this self-talk, and the conversation is with people, with somebody that is pulling the failures or whatever in our background, and the nose is pulling that into the conversation. It's telling us, who are we to do this? That's what I meant by that. And I think it's also a little bit of, do you seriously think of yourself as somebody that wants to genuinely help somebody move from the challenges, the problems they've got, sometimes having to point those problems out, that if you continue to do that, that's what's going to happen. I might be able to help you. Let me show you how I can help you. And then taking them there with your advice. Or do we see ourselves as selling our service? And I would prefer to come from the first part. That's what I'm trying to say here. Now, Rebecca had a point, and then Andrew.
Yeah, it was just about, it was about confidence and positivity, but it was from the footballer, is it Sterling? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah. So a young guy, but he was talking about he's so level-headed and down to earth. But the point is that he said, if you want it to happen, you better believe it. And I thought that was just a really nice way of putting it, that he's like, and one of his ex-coaches told him that your brain is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I don't know, he was just giving like life advice, and he's like 23. I was like, what the hell?
Well, I mean, he's clearly got a coach, and you know, and I think we do need to be helped. We all need to be inspired to help. Somebody needs to believe in us and let them know, because otherwise, most of the other people
yourself up, I think,
are moaning too much about their own problems, or you know, they don't want you to be successful. Andrew and then Mel.
Yeah, just to say, I think for me, a huge epiphany was when I started doing networking, because I think I would see people and think, oh wow, they've got it all sorted, you know, look at, you know, very successful business, they're very confident, etc. You get chatting to people and scratch the surface, and everyone's struggling actually. And that's actually very, very empowering, because when you realise that, and also Tim Peake, the UK astronaut, he said he wished when he was younger, somebody had explained to him that everybody is struggling. When you understand that, that's very empowering, I find, because you know we're all in it together, and it's not that everyone's great and you're like really struggling. Actually, everybody is.
I don't know about struggling. I think everybody's got an issue. They've got something they're just not happy with, etc. Or
past all sorts of things.
I think maybe the Buddhists in the community have got it really sorted. Mel.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, believe it or not, some of the most sort of negative people I've worked with, and Ewan could probably relate to this in big agencies, are the creative department. They'll come back and give you 10 reasons to be negative and not one reason to be positive. You know, they always seem to overthink it sometimes, and want to sort of go away and come up with something that is totally probably irrelevant to the brief. But they, you know, creatives are supposed to be these, you know, flamboyant people, but they can be very negative on a bad day.
From our conversations earlier about it's not so much the pipeline, because we've covered that. It's the conversations we have with people. Has anybody come up with something that they might do slightly different? Do we all think we could be asking more relevant questions, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. Just pushing that bit more. If they've already used your service, like you said with me earlier, just ask, you know, why didn't you go back to that person? What did it not do for you? And I don't know, it seems like being a little bit cheekier, but it's actually a perfectly legitimate question to ask, isn't it? If they're coming
It's very confident question.
Yeah. They're coming to procure exactly the same thing again. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
If something's not worked for them, why? The question is, first of all, why do you think it didn't work?
Yeah.
Because they'll have in the mind why they think it's not worked. Therefore, they'll think they've got a solution, won't they? Or they're looking for a solution, and it might, but they're not an expert, and they don't know why it didn't work. They think they know why it worked, and they might be spot on, but very often they're not. And therefore, you can acknowledge that, but also say, well, what did you also do about that? You know, how long did you allow for it, or you know, whatever the issue is. And then you start to say that there's more to this than meets the eye, which elevates you even further as the expert.
Yeah. Good.
I came across something during the week, and although it's for, we need to be mindful, of course, that when you're in a conversation like this, and sometimes you're not necessarily, you might still end up with no's, and you will, if you get enough people going through, you'll have some no's. Might be worthwhile thinking about, well, I'm sorry we can't help you on this occasion. Well, I think you can see from this conversation, this is where we excel. We take people and you might throw in a few clients you've worked for. You might be in a position to say, well, you're not going to use this at this time. Cake, for instance, you're not, perhaps we've come in a bit more expensive than you wanted, but do you know, no, I'm going the wrong way here, because I was going to say, do you know anybody else that might do? But I get the Critic, because my journalist friend is in it to begin with, and it's quite nice. It's about £6. It's like a book, so I never read them all, but I've got it on a good deal. That came through during the day, and I thought this was really good. And it was a form here in the cover, and it says, refer 3 friends and get 1 free issue added onto your subscription today. And I thought, how clever was that? Because I know 2 or 3 people. It turns out I've asked and they already subscribe. But I'm thinking, who might like a free copy of the Critic? Because I like it, etc. So that could be a good subject for other ways to get referrals. So it could be, I don't know, my first thought with Helen, for instance, is after a party, you go back to that person and you could say this, you had a really good party. How was the cake? Did everybody enjoy it? And you might even ask them, look, there are 1 or 2 people here that are probably coming up, some of your friends coming up for your 60th birthday. If they'd like to if you want to put them in touch, then I'm more than happy to do whatever and give whatever, and ask for a referral in that way. Nathan, when he goes and wins that client, and by asking questions, how did we do, is a good question. Don't be frightened of it, because if there's something you didn't do that they weren't pleased with, put it right. But very often it was great. How did we do with that course that I went on? Now, knowing full well they're going to want to tell other people, maybe you can say, well, if there's anybody else, I build my business from referrals. If there's anybody else that could like to go through that same experience, I'd love for you to let them know. And if they do, I've got a little, a little voucher that will give them an introduction to whatever, without destroying the price you already charged, of course. Mel.
Yeah, we touched on direct marketing before, and recommend a friend or member get member is one of the most tried and tested solutions in the industry, really, and that's been going on for years, and we used it very successfully. Recommend a friend.
Well, they're building circulation. It's probably a bit more right wing, but they're building circulation very, very rapidly, so they'll want to do that. Right. If there's no other, what I'd like to do now is to just find out one takeaway you've got from today's meeting as I go around, but also what I think I would like to do next week is we promised last week we'd talk about a bit more about the art of storytelling in your sales presentation, in your conversations, because people buy into stories. And, everywhere I look at the moment with all sorts of things, it's stories. I don't know why there's an algorithm going on that I just get everybody's talking about the power of stories. And Anne-Marie last week kindly said that she would come in and give us some tips on storytelling. But I'd like to do a double header. I'd like to bring Nick in, if he will. If you can't in the time, then tell us. But he told us a remarkable story at the end of last year about how he got himself into Bath Life and what he did and maybe the result of that. And I think from that story, I think we could all pick up on maybe a campaign and pick up on that. So would you two be up for that? If we,
yeah,
I talk less and you split that session, that would be great. And by the way, if you want to prepare any visuals, you let us see some of the images, you can always share the screen and, okay. Yeah, no, so if I can go around and just get us parting remarks or one takeaway from today, Nathan.
Like I said a minute ago, asking about if they used your services last time, just prying a bit deeper and using that as your kind of starting point, I guess. I think that's a really good point, and I'm going to start doing that.
Word why is a great question. You can't use it enough times. Ollie.
Yeah, I think for me is, and this might have been covered a bit more last week, but understanding the problems that prospective clients have, and then being confident that I'm the one that can deliver that solution to them. So I think, yeah, probably the overriding thing is that being confident, I think, with our ability to kind of, or my ability to solve their problems, I think is the takeaway for me.
I think also, especially in your business, and me from a marketeer, but everybody, I suppose, you should look at those problems, but without your agenda. Your agenda's there. You want to do business naturally, but they're not as concerned about your agenda. They're concerned about their problems. So sometimes that's where surrounding yourself with close referral partners, close people in the same industry, but they have different skills. So if the solution, for instance, is we need to get more video onto this, you need far better photography, and I'm sure you do it anyway. It doesn't mean that you have to do that. You can pull that in with people you trust. So it's really understanding you're trying to help them with a bigger issue, because you'll win that client for long term, because you're almost like the unpaid, well, you are paid, but you're like the non-executive director on their team, trying to get them from where they are to where they would like to be long term, and both seeing it together. Let's do this together. That's the atmosphere that makes for long-term clients. Helen.
Sorry, it's unmute. I apologize for the background noise, but I share an office with my husband. So
yeah, that's all right.
What am I taking away from it this morning? Honestly, you just got to turn up here every week, because there's always a solution and it works. And it's just, I walk away feeling, you see, it can work. I know it can work. But thank you. And thank you, everybody, for contribution.
When we get round to referrals again and strategic partnerships, one of the areas for Helen would be to connect ourselves with some rich people, or that serve rich people. That's the way to do it.
I actually said to her while we
rich
were
florists. Sorry.
And I said to her while we were chatting, and I came up with 12 celebrities in our area and 2 very wealthy people. So I've got a little list to start with.
Nick.
Oh God, we covered a lot of ground today, didn't we? I think maybe the conversation around qualification, and I don't think it matters how busy you are. And I think, if you're just starting out, maybe your work, but it's still important. And
you've broke up quite a bit there. Do you want to go back over that again, Nick?
Push away those that aren't your clients, and always active and always listening.
I didn't catch any of that.
Oh, sorry, was it breaking?
Yeah.
A little bit.
No, you keep freezing and maybe come back at the end. Rebecca.
Right.
It might be my end. I don't know. Rebecca?
Hi, yeah. Yeah, just about the lead making and connecting. Having that as the starting point of the pipeline and getting that more formalized, I think, was sort of, and being confident about making that connection, because you really think you can help them in some way, just genuinely want to be helpful.
People feel that. People do feel it. They know hype, they can feel hype, but also they can know when they're being sold to, but they can feel somebody that is genuinely looking to help them. And don't be put off by those people that don't want the help.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, I think for me, the message that comes from a lot of people, not just here, is about keeping it really simple. Because I think we tend to get very bogged down with technicalities because we know what we're talking about. And I think that's come across massively today, particularly when we did the breakout rooms for me, just literally talking about how we can make our message clearer and what the benefits of that are going to be. And that's just really powerful, I think.
Yeah. Clarity. Ewan.
I think for me, great session as always. The key point was, I think, the strong but silent type Andrew, what he came up with. I think that resonated a lot.
Good. Andrew.
Flattery's just got you in absolutely everywhere. Again, yeah, I think really for me, it's quite interesting. I think my qualifications going quite well, and that's sort of reinforced today. But the sort of how did I do that as well, but I don't do it in a formal way, and I'm really missing an opportunity there, because I do speak to people and I always get great feedback, and I also get some good pointers as well, but I don't formalize it, and I'm missing the trick. So that's definitely something I'm going to take away from today's meeting.
Yeah, perhaps sometimes we're frightened of a negative comment, but actually just give me a clue as to how I might improve and go to the next level so I can charge more.
Oh, yes, but I don't formalize it. So.
Yeah. Marcus.
I particularly enjoyed being in the breakout room with Mel and Chris. You know, we had a really nice, honest chat there. That was really lovely. I'm obviously here to learn about the sales and marketing, because I'm absolutely abysmal at it. But I did enjoy the riff we had. That was just triggered off by talking about certainty and confidence. I really enjoyed that, and that was a highlight for me.
You know, we all these photographers on here, I bet when you're talking about your photography and about styling people, I bet you're pretty certain, aren't you?
Well, yes.
Good. Nick, do you want to try again?
Yeah, can you hear me now, guys?
Yes. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what happened before. Yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation around the qualification process. I think, you know, when we start out, maybe we don't have that many clients coming through, so we tend to grab at everything. But as you get busier, that qualification process is really important, and I think it allows you to really home in on your ideal clients and for you to act as the guide. And I thought the conversations around that kind of topic were really good today. And yeah, conversation with Andrew. Andrew's in a great place where he's got lots of referrals coming in. I really enjoyed that conversation, and Andrew's really clear on who he wants to work with and his qualification process. So that was great, Andrew. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.
You have to think of somebody else that you can pass that other business on that you don't want to somebody else, so that they can reciprocate back with better clients for you. Me, I'm just looking for fat blokes over 40 that want to that want to change their lives. So I'm sure you'll spot a few over the next week.
Qualify me in, Paul. I'm trying to lose weight.
Good. I'll look forward to have a great week. And sorry, Mel.
Yeah, mine again was in the breakout with.
Mel, it's because everybody moved round. I tend to go around. Beg your pardon, Mel.
That's right. With Marcus and Chris, and it was interesting to talk to people in different businesses and different industries to mine, to see their mindset of, you know, what we feel is going to happen when, you know, we come out of lockdown and when sort of furlough finishes. So it's good to get a different perspective on different businesses.
Yeah. So it's story time next week. Looking forward to it. Good. See you then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great week.
Bye.